My entire world felt like it had been torn apart in the span of a few days. And now, as I sit here, I feel the weight of it all sinking in deeper. I never imagined I'd be in this position, exposing the very family I thought I knew. But here I am, seeking an outside perspective, desperate for a voice of reason in this twisted reality. I thought I had a solid grip on my life, on who my family was, especially my sister, Hannah. But what I've learned in the past few days has shattered that illusion completely. We were always the picture of unity, weren't we? Growing up in a close knit family, everything about us was perfect. My sister Hannah, 32, and I, 28, were always the golden children, the pride of our parents. Two sisters who never fought, who did everything together, despite our 4 year age gap. People admired us, envied us, and we played our parts to perfection. But beneath the surface, there was more than just sibling harmony. When I faced bullying in middle school, it wasn't just an emotional wound, it was a constant battle. But Hannah was my warrior, always there to defend me, to shield me from the world. When she had her first heartbreak at 16, I was the one who stayed up all night beside her, holding her as she cried. Our bond seemed unbreakable, the kind of relationship people only dream of. My parents never missed a chance to boast about their daughters, how we were not just sisters, but best friends, inseparable in every way. Even as adults, we kept up the charade, the image of perfect unity. We both stayed in our hometown after college, lived just 20 minutes apart, and met up at least twice a week. Whether it was coffee or lunch, our time together was sacred. She was my rock, always offering advice on work, relationships, life. Every significant moment, every breakthrough or setback, I shared with her first. I trusted her more than anyone else, more than anything. She was the first person I called when I had news, good or bad. My life, my happiness, felt anchored in the belief that we were untouchable, that we had a bond that nothing could break. That is, until Phil entered the picture. I met him at a charity event 5 years ago. He was introduced by a mutual friend, and I remember that night like it was yesterday. Hannah right there beside me, encouraging me to get to know him better. She even told me he seemed like a great guy. She wanted me to connect with him, to pursue something with him, and I did. Phil was everything I'd ever dreamed of, successful, kind-hearted, and completely devoted to me. He would surprise me with my favorite foods on bad days, always remembering little details about me that no one else did. Despite his demanding schedule, he always made time for me. And Hannah? She adored him. The two of them got along so well, and I couldn't have been happier. She helped him plan his proposal, spent countless hours making our wedding preparations perfect, and gave a speech at our wedding that brought everyone to tears. But now, looking back, every part of that happiness feels like a lie. The past year had been difficult for Phil and me. We had started trying for a baby right after our second anniversary, but nothing seemed to work. Month after month, the hope that we might finally get pregnant was dashed, leaving us frustrated and exhausted. We went through fertility testing, but everything appeared normal, which only made it harder. We followed every doctor's suggestion, tracking ovulation, adjusting our diet, trying to reduce stress, but still, no results. Phil was always there for me, attending every appointment, holding me when I cried after each negative test. He kept reassuring me that it would happen when the time was right. Hannah, too, was there, offering her support, her empathy. She and her husband Caleb didn't have kids yet, so she said she understood the pain and the frustration I felt. She even recommended her gynecologist to me, saying they were excellent with fertility issues. I leaned on her in ways I didn't even realize, trusting her completely, never imagining that I was walking straight into a storm. 2 months ago, everything changed. We finally got the news we had been praying for. I was pregnant. The first test was faint, so I took 3 more just to be sure. When I told Phil, he cried with joy. We decided to wait a few weeks before sharing the news with our families, just to be safe. At 8 weeks, we planned a dinner party to announce it, inviting everyone to our house last Friday. My parents, Hannah and Caleb, and even our younger brother Ben, who made it despite his demanding residency schedule, were all there. The day was perfect. I spent all day cooking everyone's favorite dishes, making sure everything was just right. The dinner went off without a hitch. Everyone was in high spirits, laughing, sharing stories. But Hannah? She seemed a little quiet. I thought she was just tired, but I didn't give it much thought. After dinner, when everyone moved into the living room for coffee, I started to feel nauseous, a pregnancy symptom that had been hitting me hard lately. I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs, and that's when everything changed. As I was making my way back down, I heard voices coming from Phil's home office. The door was partially open, and I could hear them talking. Phil and Hannah, speaking in low voices. I was about to walk past, assuming they were just having a private conversation, when I heard Hannah cry. The sound stopped me dead in my tracks. And then, the words she spoke shattered everything. "I can't keep lying anymore," she sobbed. "I love him too much to keep pretending. We need to tell her the truth." Phil's voice was low, urgent, trying to calm her, telling her they needed to wait for the right time, to think about everyone involved. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, my mind racing with disbelief. What was happening? What was this? Then came the words that would haunt me forever. "I'm pregnant too, and it's Phil's baby." My body froze, my breath caught in my chest. I must have made some noise, because both of them spun around, their faces filled with guilt and fear, fear that I could see too clearly. Hannah reached for me, her voice shaky as she called my name, but I backed away instinctively. Phil started talking, trying to explain, but I wasn't listening. I didn't care. I was already running, fleeing from the nightmare that had just come to life. I burst into the living room, where my parents and Ben were still chatting over coffee. Caleb was in the kitchen, getting water, looking entirely out of place in this whirlwind. Everyone turned as I entered, eyes wide, shocked by the sight of me, my chest heaving with every breath. Ben immediately stood up, asking what was wrong. And then, in a single breath, I told them. My voice shook as I repeated the words that had shattered my world: the affair, the pregnancy, the betrayal. The next few minutes, complete chaos. Hannah and Phil followed me into the room, and Hannah's tears flowed freely now, mascara running down her face as she tried to explain, to apologize, but nothing she said could undo what had been done. Phil kept trying to approach me, but I couldn't let him near. I couldn't bear it. Caleb stood by the kitchen doorway, still holding his water glass, looking as shocked as I felt. But it was my parents' reaction that truly broke me. Instead of comforting me, instead of offering any support, they began talking about keeping the family together. My mom, with a calmness that chilled me, actually suggested that we needed to sit down and figure this out. Dispute at work, and one thing led to another. They couldn't resist the pull, they said. As they spoke, I could feel my heart sinking deeper, as if each word was a stone sinking me into an abyss. They admitted to sneaking around, meeting in secret, and even exchanging messages with each other while I had no idea, while I was trusting them, loving them both. My stomach churned, every muscle in my body tensing with rage and betrayal. They kept talking, their voices muffled by the door, as if they expected some kind of sympathy from me, or worse, understanding. How could I understand this? How could I ever understand this kind of betrayal? The kind that cuts through everything I thought I knew about the people I trusted most in the world. The more they revealed, the clearer it became. This wasn't just some fling. This had been going on for months. I had been living in the dark, a puppet in their game, while they carried on behind my back. And to make matters worse, they were speaking as if this was all some unfortunate mistake, a mistake that could be swept under the rug like an awkward family disagreement. I couldn't even process what was happening. It felt like I was living in some twisted nightmare that I couldn't escape from. I wanted to scream, to punch the door, to run, and never look back. But I stayed silent, frozen in the hallway of Ben's apartment, too overwhelmed by disbelief to do anything but breathe deeply and try not to collapse. My phone buzzed again, more messages, more apologies. They thought they could fix this. My parents, my sister, my husband, they all thought I could just forgive, just move on. But how could I? How could I ever forget what they'd done? How could I ever go back to pretending that everything was fine? Ben kept trying to calm me, kept telling me I didn't have to listen to them, that I deserved so much more than this twisted family drama. But even with his support, the weight of their betrayal pressed down on me, suffocating every ounce of hope I had left. Would things ever be the same? Would I ever trust anyone again? Or had everything I knew about love, family, and loyalty just shattered irreparably? I couldn't help but think of the baby growing inside me, a life that had already been marred by this painful chaos. What kind of future was I offering this child? A future tainted by deceit and lies? Would this child ever know what it was like to have a stable, loving family? Or was I just doomed to raise them in the ruins of my broken past? The next day, when I went to the doctor, I barely remembered the drive there. I was numb, my body moving on autopilot while my mind swirled with the weight of it all. The ultrasound showed my baby's heartbeat, a tiny flicker of life that filled me with fleeting hope, but even that couldn't erase the pain, because just as quickly as the hope appeared, it vanished. Leaving the clinic, the worst possible thing happened. I ran into Hannah. There she was, standing in the hallway, her baby bump so obvious, so inescapable. I could barely breathe. My mind was flooded with thoughts of betrayal, of her wearing my clothes, living my life. The reality hit me like a punch to the gut. She was carrying my husband's child, and there she was, standing in front of me as if this was something we could just talk about calmly, as if nothing had happened. I could feel my body betray me, the nausea rising up in waves as I rushed to the bathroom. When I came out, she was still there, still trying to speak to me, as if I could somehow find it in my heart to forgive her. My anger boiled over, but before I could say anything, Ben was there. He stepped between us, his voice steady, unwavering. "Leave," he told her, and in that moment, I was so grateful for him, for the stability he was offering in the chaos. But it didn't end there. Oh no, the worst was still to come. Later that night, my parents showed up, unannounced, standing in the hallway like they had every right to barge into my life, to fix everything, to keep the family together, as if it could all be fixed with a few words. Hannah and Phil were waiting outside in their car, orchestrating this so-called family meeting. I refused to open the door, but they wouldn't leave. They stood there, relentlessly, pleading through the door, justifying everything they had done. The more they talked, the more I realized just how deep the betrayal went. The affair had lasted for over a year. Over a year of lies, of secrecy, of them weaving this twisted web while I was completely blind to it. And now they wanted me to forgive them? To accept it? To act like everything was normal? I couldn't. I couldn't even fathom it. As I listened to them, my heart shattered into a million pieces. It was my business, the one I had poured so much of myself into, the one I had helped build with savings from my hard-earned money. And now, it was being used to justify the most unimaginable betrayal. The excuses started flowing, classic ones. They tried to downplay it, to say they never intended for it to happen. They claimed guilt but insisted they couldn't control their feelings. And then my mother, in what she probably thought was an attempt to console, said maybe it was all meant to be. After all, Hannah had always wanted children but had struggled with fertility, as if that made any of this okay. But here's the thing that hit me hardest. Caleb. Caleb had no idea. He had been out of town, handling business when everything went down. Hannah had to tell him herself, over the phone, that night. He filed for divorce almost immediately. I can't even fathom receiving news like that, especially so far from home. But it didn't end there. The real gut punch came when my parents revealed they had known about the affair for 6 months. 6 months. They had caught Hannah and Phil together at our family cabin during a weekend that was supposed to be about helping my dad with some renovations. And instead of stepping in, instead of protecting their own daughter from the devastation, they chose to stay silent. They didn't want to hurt anyone, they said. They believed Hannah and Phil would sort it out on their own. And that sent me over the edge. I screamed at them, told them they were terrible parents, more concerned with appearances than with protecting me. I reminded them of all the nights I cried to them about my struggles with infertility, all the times they saw me endure treatment after treatment, all the while knowing my own sister was sleeping with my husband. And she, sitting across from me at family dinners, pretending to be the one who understood. How could they have watched me comfort her about her own fertility battles? It was unfathomable. My mom started crying, her voice trembling, telling me they just didn't want to hurt anyone. But my dad? He got angry, actually angry at me. He called me selfish, childish, said I wasn't looking at the bigger picture. He mentioned that families had survived worse, as if that was supposed to make everything better. Ben, my quiet, peace-loving brother, finally snapped. I'd never seen him so furious. He told our parents they were disgusting for defending Hannah and Phil, and if they didn't leave immediately, he'd call the police. It was the only time I had ever heard him raise his voice in anger. They left, but not before my mom slipped a note under the door, begging me to think about the family. The next few days were an absolute nightmare. The smear campaign began. My parents and Hannah started reaching out to anyone and everyone, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't heard from in years, telling me I should forgive Hannah because family is forever. Some went so far as to suggest I was being cruel for not allowing Hannah and Phil to be happy, as if their happiness somehow mattered more than my shattered trust, than the betrayal that was now consuming me. I blocked them all, except for Ben and Caleb. Caleb reached out. We met for coffee yesterday. We're both struggling, drowning in the same pain. It helped talking to someone who truly understood the depth of this betrayal. Caleb's moving to another state for a fresh start, and honestly, I'm considering it too. But he shared something with me that made my blood run cold. Hannah had been gaslighting him for months about her fertility, making him feel guilty for their inability to conceive, while secretly taking birth control pills. She had been deceiving him all along. The divorce proceedings are underway, but Phil is trying to delay everything. He wants to wait until both babies are born before making any permanent decisions. My lawyer says it's just manipulation, trying to keep control over the situation. Thankfully, Ben's friend is a great divorce attorney and took my case on immediately. I'm still staying with Ben, my rock through all of this. He's helping me find a place of my own, Hanantua, and he's the only family I have left who I can truly trust. Every time I think about my parents knowing about the affair while I was undergoing fertility treatments, crying about not being able to conceive, I feel physically sick. The whole situation is surreal. How do you process the fact that your parents chose to protect the one who betrayed you? How do you ever trust them again? And how do I move forward when I realize that while I was planning a joyful announcement about my pregnancy to a family who should have loved and supported me, they were all just sitting there, waiting for the lies to come crashing down? Just when I thought things might finally be starting to settle, everything exploded again. I'd found my own apartment, a small one-bedroom place, but it was mine. For the first time in a long while, I thought I could breathe again. Then, out of nowhere, I received a call that changed everything. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but I answered, hoping it was a potential employer. It was Phil's sister, Sarah. We'd never been close. She lived in another state, only visiting during holidays. But what she told me shattered me all over again. Sarah had been helping their mother clean out the old family computer when she stumbled across something that turned my world upside down. A folder full of emails between Phil and Hannah. Emails that went back 2 years, before my fertility struggles, before the wedding, before everything. They had been together long before I even married Phil. The emails were brutal to read. Sarah sent me screenshots, and I spent the entire night scrolling through them, making myself sick. They had planned to tell me about their affair several times, but always backed out. They even considered calling off the wedding, but Hannah convinced Phil that it would be easier to marry me and deal with the fallout later. Hannah had written that I would eventually get over it, that we could go on with our lives, and they could reveal their relationship when the time was right. All those times Hannah had helped with wedding planning, all those heartfelt speeches about how happy she was for us, all the moments she held me as I cried about not getting pregnant. She was lying. They both were. The emails revealed they'd been meeting secretly, making plans, lying to everyone around them. They even joked about how oblivious I was to it all. When I confronted my parents with this new information, thinking surely now they would see just how twisted everything had been, they stunned me again. They admitted they had known about the pre-marriage affair. Their excuse? They thought I was too sensitive to handle the truth and feared I might do something drastic if I found out. My mom even suggested that maybe it all worked out for the best, that now the truth was finally out in the open. Ben was furious when he found out. He had a massive fight with our parents and revealed something I never knew. Apparently, they had done something similar years ago with his college girlfriend. They had proof she was cheating with multiple guys but chose not to tell him. He only found out after they broke up, when one of her friends drunkenly spilled the truth at a party. It hit me then. Our parents had a pattern. They hid uncomfortable truths, swept them under the rug, all in the name of protecting us. The reality is, some people are more invested in keeping up the image of the perfect family than actually offering support when things get tough. Ben opened up about the way our family treated our cousin when he was struggling with addiction. Instead of helping him, they chose to cover up his problems, and it ended with him in the hospital. That's when the stress of it all really hit me. My pregnancy's been affected. My blood pressure shot up during my last checkup, and my doctor practically begged me to keep my stress in check. She even suggested taking time off work, but I can't afford that right now. So I've decided to put myself and my baby first. I'm not engaging with anyone in the family except Ben. I've even told my lawyer about the emails, which is helping with the divorce proceedings. And then Sarah revealed something else. Phil had been moving money around in our joint accounts months before everything blew up. My lawyer's now digging into possible financial fraud on top of everything else. We've filed emergency motions to freeze certain assets, and it seems like the judge is taking it seriously. Meanwhile, Phil and Hannah have gone completely public with their relationship. They're posting about their love story like it's some grand romance, acting like they didn't destroy 2 marriages to make it happen. They're calling it a complicated but beautiful journey, insisting that sometimes you just have to follow your heart no matter the cost. And then, my parents? They're liking and commenting on their posts, proudly acting like grandparents to be. They even shared Hannah's pregnancy announcement, complete with professionally staged photos of her and Phil holding ultrasound pictures. What hurts even more is seeing old friends and family members commenting with supportive messages on their posts. People who know exactly what they did to me and Caleb. It's like they've somehow rewritten history, making their affair look romantic when it was nothing but a calculated, years long betrayal of two people who trusted them completely. Caleb called me yesterday. He's settling into his new city, and he says the distance has actually helped him start healing. But then he mentioned something that blew my mind. Hannah's been trying to convince their friends to talk Caleb into giving her spousal support, claiming she can't work because of her high risk pregnancy, the same pregnancy she got from cheating on him. The audacity of these people, it's staggering. I'm trying to stay strong for my baby, but some days feel impossible. The thought that my parents knew about their relationship before my wedding and still allowed me to walk into that situation, I don't think I'll ever forgive them for that. The whole thing escalated after my last post, forcing me to take serious legal action. I wanted peace. I wanted to protect my baby, but they pushed me too far. Despite me making it crystal clear that I wanted no contact, my family became relentless. They started showing up at my workplace so often that my boss had to threaten them with trespassing charges. They somehow found my new apartment and started leaving letters and gifts at my door. But the worst part? They tried to contact my doctor, claiming they were worried about my mental health affecting the baby. Then it got even worse. They created a shared family calendar titled Double Joy, Grandbabies No Less, and added both my and Hannah's pregnancy appointments, doctor visits, and due dates. They shared that calendar with extended family and even some mutual friends. They somehow got hold of my medical schedule and were posting updates about my pregnancy without my consent, like I wasn't even a person to them anymore. That was the final straw. I contacted a lawyer and started the process of getting a restraining order. I had all the evidence: text messages, emails, social media posts, security footage from my apartment building, witness statements from my coworkers, and the unauthorized sharing of my medical information. My lawyer said it was one of the clearest cases of harassment she had ever seen. And my parents' reaction? Exactly what I expected. My mom left a hysterical voicemail about how I was destroying the family and how I'd regret keeping my baby from her grandparents. My dad sent a formal-looking email to my lawyer's office since I had him blocked everywhere else. He said I was being manipulated by Ben and my lawyers, and that I clearly wasn't stable enough to be making these decisions. Their behavior in the hearing? Even worse. They tried to paint me as this unstable, jealous sister who couldn't handle my ex-husband moving on. They brought up how I've always been sensitive and prone to overreaction, and they even tried to use my pregnancy as proof that I wasn't thinking clearly. The judge saw right through it. The restraining order was granted without hesitation. It covers me, Ben, who asked to be included after they started harassing him at work, and any future children of mine. It prevents them from coming within 500 feet of us, contacting us in any way, or posting about us on social media. The judge was especially concerned about their attempts to access my medical information and their creation of that shared calendar. Now, I'm 7 months pregnant with a healthy baby girl. Ben got a job offer in another city, and since I could transfer within my company, we decided to move together. We found a beautiful 3-bedroom apartment, plenty of space for me, my daughter, and Ben. Caleb actually lives nearby too, and he's been an amazing friend through all of this. It helps to have someone who understands. The distance has given me clarity I didn't have before. My family's behavior was never about love or forgiveness. It was about control, about maintaining their fantasy of a perfect family. They never cared about me or Caleb. They just wanted to keep up appearances, no matter who they hurt along the way. My parents still try to reach out through new email addresses and phone numbers, but I just delete everything unread. I heard from a former coworker that Hannah and Phil got married in a small family ceremony last month. Apparently, the photos are all over social media, with captions about true love finding its way. I got an invitation, but I didn't go. Instead, Ben spent the day helping me set up the nursery in our new place. The divorce is almost finalized. Phil tried one last-ditch effort to delay everything by claiming he wanted to be there for both of his children, but my lawyer shut that down in a heartbeat. The judge wasn't fooled by his attempts to play the devoted father, especially after finding out he'd been moving assets around behind my back. Sometimes I feel sad about losing my family. But then, I remember, I didn't lose them. I escaped them. My daughter will have a smaller family than I ever imagined, but it will be an honest one. She'll grow up knowing she's loved by people who respect boundaries and tell the truth. She'll have her Uncle Ben, who chose to protect his sister instead of enabling abusers. And she'll learn that sometimes the smallest families are the healthiest ones. To everyone who supported me through this nightmare, thank you. Your comments and messages gave me the strength to keep going when I doubted myself. And to anyone else going through something similar, protect your peace at all costs. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that save us.